started, I will warn you also that among other ways I might introduce myself, I'm diabetic, and so I have machines that will start buzzing and dinging and so forth, and you know, if I'm not paying attention, you might just kind of tap me lightly on the head and then pass me a cupcake. Right? So this is great to have all of you out here, and for me, you know, since I don't teach that many other classes, I do teach collaboration in the spring, and I still have room in that class if people are looking for an elective. But it's great to work with the Capstone students on these projects. I'm an academic, but I've also got a degree in urban planning and experience working in nonprofits and working actually on community issues here on campus. So it's really interesting for me to be working on projects where you're doing work that's relevant to organizations that are out there, and at the same time you're kind of bringing your education together, all the pieces of your education together for this final culminating experience. I mean, you got to be excited about that, a culminating experience. So tonight we're going to go through some basics, and just to start with, I mean, the idea, the purpose of both the Capstone and the Thesis is to really find a way for you to integrate what you've been learning in the different classes in terms of your substantive interests, but also in terms of the methodologies that you've learned, the theories that you've learned, and really kind of have something that is sort of a ribbon on the package of your graduate degree. So we certainly have expectations of these projects as faculty members, but it really is up to you to create that final experience that's going to be meaningful for you, whether it's on the thesis side or on the capstone side. So we'll be talking about both of those tonight, and we'll have some opportunity as well for you to ask questions and for you to kind of grab people individually and say, oh, I'm thinking about this, and you know, can you give me some ideas? Can I bounce some things off of you? In addition to hearing from our resources. So that's the basic ideas, that for a graduate program, it isn't just a matter of taking classes. It's a matter of kind of making it your own, and that's what we hope will happen for each of you, and I'm sure that it will, because you know this isn't the first time we've been in this room, and we've worked with a lot of other students going through the same kind of process. Okay, so if you're going to take Capstone in the spring, you need to get enrolled, and the email that I sent out today was kind of laying out some of the basic mechanics of that. As you know, Krista has moved to a different position, and so the things where we used to just turn around and Krista would say what was happening next, we're actually having to engage with a little bit differently this time, but it's working well, and with the help of Pam and all the faculty, we're all going to get through this together, right? So do your punch list, which means fill out that form. Send it to me, and I will then send it on to your program advisor so you can get an enrollment code. And basically that's just making sure that all the pieces are in place. And what's that going to entail? It's going to entail identifying what your project is, identifying who your second reader is, and I'll talk about the readers a little bit more in a bit, and having your city training done. Maybe there's another one on there. Oh yeah, I was going to borrow your list. Yeah. Attend the Capstone orientation. Right. You just put the date there, choose your project, select and confirm your second reader, complete your city training, put in the date for that, and then send it to me, P. Warner, and my address is on that email. Okay, and we'll go from there. I put a time frame on this, you know, just because it's not that far until the end of the semester, and things get lost at the end of the semester. So this is the time to kind of bring it. You got a couple weeks to sort of bring it together. Maybe you've already been talking with an organization and you need to firm that up. Maybe you've already mentioned it to a second reader and you need to firm that up, and then get it to me, and we'll move those things forward. Okay? My wife is heading home now. It's handy. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, so talked about the student checklist. So here's what we're going to do tonight. I'm going to talk about Capstone fundamentals, right? We're going to talk about Thesis fundamental with Dr. Weir when she gets here, and hear a little bit from Carly's experience. And maybe we get Jay in here on a little bit as well. Then we're gonna hear a little bit from our wonderful support person in the library, who's probably already your best friend. If she isn't already, she will be your best friend. And then we'll hear from one of our community partners. You know, we really appreciate the community partners. I think that they get something out of these capstone projects, but we really appreciate what they're doing to help us and to educate you in your path forward. Okay? So that's the idea. And then at the end, and let's see, it's 10 after 5, so you know, probably by 6 anyway, we should be done with all the talking and be able to just kind of have a little bit of some one-on-one conversations. All right, we good with that? Okay, what's next? Okay, so capstone. How many people are planning to do capstone? Raise your hand. A lot of you. How many of you are planning to do it in the spring? A lot of you. Okay, and Dr. Cottle teaches it in the fall. At this point, it's probably going to be, we're going to be passing it back and forth.
Until I mess it up real
bad. We're like, yeah, we're like this. We like mind meld on this thing. So
I woke up this morning thinking of Dr. Warner.
Yeah, that's a little frightening.
And then I showed it to Mom.
There wasn't a beard in it. I didn't feel a beard like right next to me. That would have been.
Good thing we don't teach this class at the same time.
Yeah. Okay. So partnering with your client organization. Hopefully you've already done some thinking about this, and that's going to be a process that we'll work with you, and your second reader will work with you, so that we can make sure that you have a project that's appropriate and that is scaled appropriately for getting it done in a semester. The thing about the capstone that's a little bit different from the thesis is you don't have that much time to do it within the semester. We're in week 10 maybe now?
13, 12 or 13.
Yeah, so by that time you're almost done with your writing. So it's critical that you have a clear concept going into it, and that's understood with your partner or client organization. Okay? It's also critical that, you know, sometimes client organizations get really excited about what you might be able to do. We need to make sure that that's actually going to work within the time frame of the semester, so that you don't get in a pinch where there's things that are out of your control. You need permission from somebody who's left the planet or whatever it might be. So I'd encourage you to be thinking more about that in the next couple of weeks as we firm these up and get you enrolled in the class. The types of projects vary a lot. Your interests vary a lot. Criminal justice, public administration, both of those fields are pretty wide-ranging, and there's some projects that will look more like a traditional research project with data and methods and so forth. And there's other projects that are going to be more towards the applying the things that you've learned to a particular project, gathering evidence that's useful for that organization. So there's going to be a range. If you are in class, how many people are going to come to class? Okay, a fair number will be in class, and the rest will be doing it online. Either way is fine. But if you're coming to the in-class version, you're going to also learn a lot from your peers, and likewise online, because you're all working on the same thing, the same task, but in different arenas. And I think you're going to find that the insights you get from your peers will be very useful. And you've got a lot of peers that have not only school experience but professional experience. That is no doubt going to be valuable. So partnering with the client organizations, scoping your projects, figuring out whether it's a research project that needs to go through IRB or not, and there's not one single answer to that. It's going to depend on exactly what you're doing and what your intentions are with the research. And then fitting it inside of a semester time frame. Okay? So I've only been in public administration a couple of years. Before that, I was in the administration and in sociology. So the actual format of Capstone is still somewhat new to me, but I think I get it. And I think it makes sense that it's set up with a lot of intermediate deadlines that you have to meet, and where you can get some feedback. Now, in the end, it's a whole project, so it's not like every single part is just you add them together. You do the single parts, and then it kind of comes together and is based on your intellectual and scholarly work, but also your ability to make sense of a real world context and have conversations with your partner organizations, etc. So that's all part of the picture, and I think the structure and the timeframes that we have set up will keep you on track to get finished by the end. Now, there might be some ugly pieces along the way, and that's okay. Sometimes, things just have to be a little bit messy, and because we have it laid out with time for editing and time for feedback, that's something that you can build on, so that by the end we've got something that you're happy with, and that is kind of goes into your portfolio, etc. Okay, the role of the readers. This is a little bit different than other projects. The first reader, the instructor of record, the person that assigns the grades, etc., it would be me, Profe. I'm pleased to meet you. I'm happy to work with you. Okay. The second, but of course, I'm not an expert in all of these things. So the purpose of the second reader is to get somebody else from the faculty, preferably who you have some experience working with, some relationship with, and that has some substantive subject matter expertise in the area that where you're hanging out. So you're working on nonprofits. Maybe you're talking with Regina Winters, and if you're working on criminal justice, maybe you're talking with Dr. Cottle, etc. You've probably got a pretty clear idea who you've taken classes from. If you want to brainstorm about that, we're happy to do that. This is something that our faculty are prepared to do and are expected to do. It's something that's part of our graduate program. So that's reader number 2. Reader number 2 is giving you feedback at every stage of the game. Yeah? Reader number 3 is your partner organization, and they are also giving you feedback throughout the game. However, we're not looking to them to help you with editing and getting your style correct and so forth. They're really the reality check. You're working with them, and does it make sense? Sometimes we get a little bit far afield when we're thinking about things, and that's our reality check. So they will be reading, they will have access to your work as we go through, but they're not, and giving feedback to us, but they're not in a traditional professor role. It's a little bit different. I think that's fair. Some of the third readers really have done a great job of helping our students along the way. So that's a good relationship to develop. Okay, so those are the readers. Then the final products is going to be a final report and also a poster presentation. This semester, the poster is it December
6th, I think, 6th or 7th. Yeah, Jay, do you know what it is? Remember?
I think it might be I think it's 6th.
Yeah.
That's 6th. Okay, so
that Wednesday.
So Wednesday, and the poster presentation is for you and for your client organizations to kind of see what the final results are, but it's also open to other people from public affairs in particular. I would encourage you, if you're taking Capstone in the spring, to come to the poster presentation in the fall.
It is 5 to 7 on December the 11th.
11, I knew that.
And-
Okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so on
So
my
see, that's
side-
where we're at this semester. We don't know.
That's right.
We're working so hard, we're not sure.
Yeah, so just write down on Prophet Keith's dad's birthday, from 5 to 7, December 11th, and it will be in, are we?
Third floor, ACAD.
Third floor. We'll take over the third floor. There will be posters all the way around. It's a cool thing to see what people are up to, and that's what you'll be doing. I don't know the date of that, but it'll be kind of comparably timed in the spring, and also if you want to bring your friends, your kindergarten teacher, that's.
There's food.
And there's
The food's really good at that.
and
that's it.
Tabby will be there, so
That's on my calendar.
that helped out. Okay, so I think that's it in terms of the very basics. Am I leaving anything out?
Can you be a little more specific about, I know Tabby, you were gonna talk about the posters, but about the actual report?
Yeah, well, the actual report is basically it's kind of a traditional paper in the sense that you're laying out what your problem is.
Right.
You're saying how it's going to be studied, which is kind of comparable to a method section. You're gathering whatever evidence you need from the real world using those methods, and you're doing an analysis, and you're doing so what. So it's kind of the same structure, depending on what your particular project is. That can vary a little bit, but it's got that shape to it. The length of it, what, 25 pages?
25 pages of
Yeah,
body.
25 pages, so you may think that's short, you may think that's long, depending on who you are. That's kind of that's a to-the-point paper. There's not a lot of extra, not a lot of BS goes into that. That's basically taking care of business. Yeah.
After you think about all the headings and everything else, my experience is students struggle more with getting with under 25 pages than they do.
Right.
And 25 pages is the limit. So, somewhere I tell students in my class somewhere between 20 and 25 pages, and it's usually them trying to pull things out and remove
Right.
things is the struggle, not trying to add to get up to 20 pages. So.
Yeah. Okay, other questions?
Is that going to be the limit for a thesis too?
No.
No.
There is no such thing as a limit on a thesis, I don't believe.
That's my literature reviews, 25 pages.
Yeah, and I tell you, if you tried to write a thesis that short, it would kill you. It would be the hardest thesis that was ever written, because there's just too much to do. Couldn't possibly pull that off. I don't think. Maybe if a mathematician could have 25 pages of equations, I suppose. Yeah. Other questions about Capstone? Okay. Yes.
Can you talk about so I currently work for an agency, I like to do my, with DOC.
Good.
What level of, are they supposed to be an organization or?
Okay, good question. And actually that brings up another point, which is what happens when you do a capstone in the place where you work. And that's okay, you can do that. It shouldn't be part of your usual job, it should be something over and above that. And then as far as who's the appropriate person to work with, I think we're less interested in sort of rank and more interested in, well, who's really going to be able to give you direction on this? I mean, clearly it has to be somebody who's authorized to work with you. You can't just kind of pick somebody out of the hall. But other than that, sometimes it might be a director, but it could be somebody in a fundraising area or a research area.
Because they evaluate your work, they can't report to you. I don't know, that's probably not going to be an issue for you, but you don't want a subordinate to supervise, be your third reader for your capstone project.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the limitations there, is that somebody that has the access, the ability to approve that, and it's not your subordinate.
Is there like a
Yeah.
white paper or something that we can explain organization, or we just kind of like, just talk to them about what the expectation is?
Well, I think the thing to do is review the materials on the capstone yourself so you can explain it, I think is gonna be the way to go, more than just kind of hand something to them, so that you can kind of talk through what we've gone through here. And of course, we're also willing to have some of those conversations if need be, if they need some clarification. You know, don't hesitate to get them in touch with me. Yeah, I'm thinking.
Yeah, there's no invitation or anything like that.
Yeah.
So it's really, I think part of the capstone process in many cases is developing that relationship with the agency so that they understand what you're trying to do. So, you know, it's much more than just a one conversation type thing. And so starting having those conversations now about what the benefit of a capstone is to your organization. And you know, we have somebody here, Letitia can talk about the benefits to the Fourth Judicial Specialty Courts area, and then you may be able to translate that into your organization too. So, whenever the time's right for that, that might be beneficial.
Yeah, you know, we do the poster presentation at the end, but it's not like we're going to take the information from that organization and just start spreading it around. I mean, it's really the understanding is it's for the purpose of your capstone, and they would be in a position to say, you know, this is just something we're going to use internally. Yeah.
So do they make an official commitment to us, or just say, I'm going to show, I mean, how do we explain to them how much time they would be giving, or we would be asking them to go through our projects?
Yeah.
So the syllabus outlines the reader's responsibilities and highlights when they'll need to provide feedback and what kind of access. And the access really depends, but we discussed having the third readers do a contract to make sure that, you know, but we were afraid that it would hinder some agencies because they may be afraid to sign off on something like that. And so it was more of a goodwill. I have a student right now whose third reader is leaving the organization for which she's partnered with, but she made contacts with other people, and so another person in the organization is going to pick up the third reader role. I have another student who had to switch third readers in the middle of the semester because they're similar situation. Somebody was leaving, their contact was leaving, and so they had to switch organizations in the middle of the semester, and so, or switch their methodology in the middle of the semester. So those are issues that come up, and what we've decided on that is the best practices is that highlight these issues at the beginning, recognize them, and work to build a security net in case something like this happens. But to say that, I mean, what would be the legal ramifications if we said you got to sign a contract for us for the data? You probably wouldn't do it, number one, and number two, we don't have a leg to stand on if they violate the contract, so it's kind of a waste of time, really, if you think about it in a
And it really is
consequential
about the
perspective.
relationship that
Yeah.
the students have with the organizations, which is part of the value of this experience. That you need to think it through, think who you can work with,
Right.
and kind of develop that report. If there's something you're not clear about, you know, by all means, talk with your second reader, talk with me. We can help clarify that for you and answer questions that come up. And you know, it works pretty well in most cases.
Key, you just pointed out something, said something that made me think of this, and I don't want to forget it. Communication is the key in the capstone, and so I think Dr. Ward is the same way I do it. I expect all students, when they communicate with their readers, to include me as a first reader.
Yes.
Because sometimes we can pick up things early that may turn into a bigger issue later, and we can squash them early and take care of it, and you may not be thinking about it. So I think the communication is the key into that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we could maybe turn to Tabby next until Enrica gets here, or
That's fine.
unless you want to talk about these.
You know what? Let's let our guest go ahead, and then if we don't have Dr. Weir, I can talk about Thesis.
Okay. Sounds
You
good.
cool with that?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
All right, well, hello again. As you heard, I am your librarian. So when it comes to Capstone, we're going to be talking about a couple different things. First, of course, I'm very concerned about your research. I am an asset for you. I am actually here for you. You can email me, you can drop by my office, you can call me, you can make appointments with me, we can meet online, we can meet face to face. I really am here for you. I actually recognize a lot of the faces in this room, which makes me feel really good that you've seen me in some way, in capacity. So congratulations on that. Now, I find when we get to the capstone, most of you are very comfortable in your research. In fact, a lot of you probably just come from research methods and are probably using your very similar topic and going right into capstone, so you may even have a literature review almost done. If you don't panic. That is something we can talk about in between semesters if you'd like, or we can talk very early on in the semester. And most of the times I'm actually in the classroom talking about research in that area. Now I can't tell you right here how to research for your capstone, and that's because I've found that everyone has a wonderfully diverse topic. There's not one teaching method I can provide for all of you. So instead it's usually one-on-one consultations, and I thrive in that. I like working online or face-to-face, whatever works best for your schedule. In fact, I was doing it just a few minutes ago. Now outside of talking about library research and finding government information and doing taking on data analysis stuff, the other part you're going to get me for is research poster design. How many of you ever designed a research poster before? Good, a couple. This is really exciting. So great. So basically, just to demystify it, your poster is going to be about this size. It's really weird, right? You're like, oh, my paper's going to come like here. No, it's not. We're not copying and pasting from your paper. That's the very first thing we'll cover, is that we don't do that. So instead, we're going to be covering how we take the essential parts of the paper that you wrote, convert it into something that is meaningful and that people can easily come up and go look at. So we'll be talking about creating content for posters. We'll talk about elements of design. If you're not a designer, that's okay. Literally, I had a student last semester who almost was in tears our first time we met to talk about poster design. She actually had one of the best posters at the end, and it was just amazing. And just don't complicate it. We'll definitely de-simplify as much as possible. Not only do I talk to you guys about poster design, but oftentimes I find I actually get more questions about poster design than research at this point. So I do consultations. I've had people send me their posters to look at, and then I provide feedback. I was with one right before printing where all their formatting got messed up because they switched between Mac and PC, and so we were able to like jump down together and fix it. That's what I'm here for, and don't be afraid of using me. I am an asset for you. Now, if you don't know how to contact me, where do you think is the best place to get my contact information? Yay! So you guys do remember that. You can either Google me or go to the library website. You'll have all of my contact information right there. And again, I am here for you.
And even make an appointment with you on.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm here for.
Yeah. And you did a video
Yes.
last year.
For the online, so if you go
It's
online,
about
like
posters.
I'm still an asset for you, you can still reach out to me, but instead of seeing me face to face, you'll just get a webinar version of it. Sorry, I had different hair at that time too, I think. So.
Okay, well, maybe we'll go on to our other community partner and then we'll finish with the thesis.
Okay.
If I could, Letitia Quintana.
Correct.
Fourth Judicial District has been a partner, especially working closely with Regina for a number of years and has accommodated a number of students. So.
Right. So I guess just because there was some discussion earlier about the partnership with agencies, I can talk to you all a little bit about what that looked like between UCCS and the Fourth, if that's helpful. For us, because we do have a Chief Justice Directive that protects court information and records, we did have to engage in a formal agreement with, it's a memorandum of understanding with UCCS, and we had to really think through some of the things that may come up for you all, but informally, such as transfer of information, what's protected, what can actually be shared, what can't, what some data has to come in aggregate form, some has to come de-identified. We have to have a special release if faculty gets identifiable information, which is really the only time we can share identifiable information, and that's even limited. We also had conversations around IRB and what the school's role would be in that, what the court's role would be in that, if that was a necessary step. We also had to talk about expectations, and that really for the agency, our big commitment was time and availability to be able to guide the student and make sure that they were getting the information that they need. That has honestly been a learning curve for us. I think we are doing a lot better than maybe the first semester. that we partnered with UCCS. And so those are some of the big considerations. I think I've worked directly with a few students with some of our courts when they didn't have coordinators for our special programs. And so I think what has worked best is having communication. For me, we scheduled things a lot because a lot of times if we wanted our judicial officers involved in the conversations, their schedules were hard to get on, and so scheduling things well in advance throughout the semester was helpful so that we could just check in if there was, to see if there was something needed. So with the problem-solving courts and the partnership that the 4th Judicial District has with the School of Public Affairs, we have special programs that are really intended to help address the underlying needs of individuals coming into contact with the justice system. We have both criminal problem-solving courts and non-criminal problem-solving courts. These are not your traditional courts where you have an adversarial approach with the prosecution and defense, and then the court making the final decision. Problem-solving courts are they're referred to sometimes as treatment courts because they're intended to address underlying issues such as mental health, addiction, post-traumatic stress disorder. Even we have a child support court, and so that's really intended to help parents who are struggling with employment and paying their child support. And so we really try to address the root cause. It's the intersection of treatment and the justice system at its finest, and really is unique in that folks are working together in a non-adversarial way, which is very different than most people experience in courts. And so those are, in general, what a problem-solving court is. And within the 4th Judicial District, we have 6 problem-solving court programs currently. We have a domestic violence court, a DUI court, veterans trauma court, recovery court. Those are our criminal problem-solving courts. And then on the non-criminal side, we have a family treatment and drug court, which is for families who have dependency and neglect cases filed because of substance abuse being a concern, resulting in abuse or neglect for the children, and they have to have children 12 or under, at least one child 12 or under. And then we also have the child support court that I mentioned. And so some of the projects that we've worked with Capstone students on before, one was with our child support court, a student developed a satisfaction survey so that we could start getting some feedback directly from the participants on how they felt the program was working, what were some of the barriers. And so we had that tool developed, and then later we had interns who actually administered that evaluation. That program has had some change with judicial officers who preside, and so we haven't got to what I hope will be a soon next step of having another Capstone student come back and be able to evaluate that data. But that will likely be in the future. With our recovery court and DUI court, we've looked at recidivism data, so looking at the type and number of people who are getting new charges while they're in program and also post-program. One of our students most recently who evaluated the recovery court, he made a beautiful poster board, and he actually left it with our judicial officer once he was done with the presentation. He said, "I have no use for this, you guys could probably use it, for sharing." And so we have a beautiful board that our judicial officer still shares with folks who come in. The recovery court in particular is looking to partner with someone in the upcoming spring semester, and their coordinator is pretty open to whatever interest the student who partners with them has. As far as evaluation, there's not something imminent on her to-do list as far as evaluation, and so that's the nice thing about our programs and our coordinators is most of the coordinators are open to whatever the students might be interested in. This semester we have a student working with our family treatment drug court, and honestly I haven't been directly involved in that project, so I don't know all of the details, but things just sort of come up. If you all have an interest in a specific program, I'm always happy to reach out. I will tell you that our veterans trauma court has a paid evaluator, and so they historically have not really engaged in the partnership with UCCS. And so, but that doesn't mean that it would, that we couldn't inquire if that was something that a student was very interested in, so.
Can we twist Judge Shakes' arm a little bit?
Yeah, maybe, maybe. I think there could be options. Anything else?
So Letitia, for people who are interested, should they get in touch with you or do it through Regina?
We have traditionally had them go through Regina so
Okay.
she could determine who might be a good fit, because we've had students reach out directly before. Do you have a preference, Regina?
No, you guys can contact me about this if you get excited, and I think a couple of you have, in classes previously, don't get dramatic. In past standard classes, you've seen some of the work that's been coming out and sort of some of the things that they've been working with, and so if that energizes you, if that seems like a good fit for you, reach out to me and we'll try and figure out a good fit, who you can talk to delve deeper into those options. Their website actually gives you a little bit more information about what some of the idiosyncrasies might be. From a nonprofit standpoint, there's some things that I didn't think that these guys do that they do, and so I wouldn't know that they would be interested in some of the things that I'm interested in. And so please go to their website and see if there might be something there that you say, oh my gosh, I really want to know more about children in this sort of area, and they're doing it, and so they might have something that might interest you. So don't just think, think broadly.
Mm-hmm. I did bring some handouts. We actually held a summit of our problem solving courts in May of this year, which I will also share that some of the data in Capstone project, the information from the Capstone students on projects that were done previously were actually used in the presentations by our judicial officers when they spoke about the programs. So anyway, this was a summary of the different programs we have. It does have the contact information for the coordinators. But again, if you're interested in a capstone project, I would encourage you to connect with Regina on that so she could determine what might be a good fit, rather than reaching out to the coordinators themselves, because they'll be like, what's going on? And so I think I only printed 15, and I know
so
there's more than
maybe
that.
just pass them around and
I'm sorry.
you're really welcome.
But as Regina mentioned, like if you just Google 4th Judicial District, Problem Solving Courts, Colorado, we do have a website and it has each different program and that information plus more that you can access if you're more curious about the programs.
Great. Thanks so much for coming out. We sure appreciate your partnership on this.
Absolutely.
And I think it gives you a sense that you're going to be working on projects that really are things happening in the world, and that's kind of cool. There's a lot of theoretical stuff that we do, but this is real world. The sign-in sheet is floating around. If you came in late, I
think we're good on this side.
Yeah, we'll try to get it on the way out. We're thankful that Dr. Weir is here. and let's turn our attention to the other culminating experience, which is the thesis project, and hear a little bit from her and her student.
Okay, so I am Dr. Henrik Weir. I am Assistant Professor of Criminal Justice here at School of Public Affairs. I'm really sorry that I was late. I got kept hostage at my kid's doctor's office. I would have never guessed that it takes 2 hours to get through the well checks. And I would have left if they didn't have my 15-year-old locked in a different room and I couldn't just go and get him. So I really apologize. And then I fought through the traffic across town. So thank you for your patience. I'm also really happy to see how many of you are here. And I'm happy to see some familiar faces. I know many of you, some of you I don't, but I am looking forward to getting to know you. I have been talking about the thesis aspect of the things for a few years now. I talk about the thesis probably because during my short tenure here at the UCCS, I have been here for 6 years. I have chaired 10 master's theses and I have been a committee member for 9 other master's students. So I have gotten quite a few of those in already. I love Capstone, there's nothing wrong with Capstone, but for whatever reason I have really taken this thesis thing apparently under my wing. So thesis, I would say, is for those students who either want to continue their studies beyond the master's degree, who are thinking about maybe going to the PhD program. I would say that you definitely want to think about thesis. But thesis would also be for those of you who just really are interested in research, or you have a topic in mind that you just want to spend a little bit more time on, and you want to know something about. So the difference between thesis and capstone is, and I apologize if I am repeating some of the information that you have already heard tonight, is of course that thesis is 2 semesters long versus whereas capstone is 1 semester long. But don't let that scare you, because sometimes it's actually really good that you have 2 semesters to work on something that you're really interested in. The other thing is that with thesis, you work with a primary faculty member, mostly one-on-one. So once you have decided that you are really interested in some topic, let's just say that you're really interested in substance abuse and how substance abuse affects A, Y, and Z, then you would find a faculty member who would be who would have expertise in the same area. You would approach that faculty member and see if that faculty member would be willing to take you under their wing and mentor you through your thesis project. And that faculty member would then become what we would call your chair, your thesis chair. That faculty member would very closely work with you one-on-one through your whole entire thesis project. At some point, you would choose 2 other committee members who typically are tenured or tenure track faculty members in your program. So if you are MCJ students, they would be in our criminal justice program. If you're a badge student, they would be in the public affairs, or dual, then you can have a combination. And ultimately, those committee members would give their input and advice for you as well. But your chair really is the one who you work very closely with. And that's the person who really will have expertise in the topic that you are interested in. Every single faculty member has a little bit different idea of how the process works. I tend to be fairly hands-on when it comes to your methods section. Again, this is just my personal preference. You may have a faculty member who is going to require that you will go and learn any given method or statistical analysis technique on your own. I feel that we necessarily do not have enough time in this program to give you the tools necessary. So I kind of help you with the stats part. What we do, like you're going to hear from Carly here in a minute, who is right now doing her thesis under me. So I give Carly, or she has to go through all the code books and get really deep into the understanding what the data set is all about, how these code books work. She has to do some recoding, combine some data. But then when it comes time to do the actual analysis part, we will sit together in my office, we'll transfer the data in my computer, and we'll do those analyses together, and so that she can understand them. So we're not gonna, at least I won't leave you hanging out there to just do this complicated statistical analysis on your own. But again, every faculty member has a different preference, so you need to talk to your faculty member before you start the process. So during the first semester, you would typically work on your research questions, your hypotheses, and what the students don't often understand too is that you may want to solve the world's problem in this. You have this amazing research question, but we don't have data for it. And you cannot, as a master student, well, you can, but unless you want to be here for the next 5 years, I would suggest that you shouldn't go and do your own original data collection. A, that takes a really long time. B, it's sometimes really hard to get an IRB approval, and those who you do not know what IRB, it's Institutional Review Board here at the university. Anytime you as a researcher come in contact with the human subjects, meaning you are interviewing somebody, surveying somebody, asking questions from somebody, you are going to need university's approval for that to make sure that you're not doing anything unethical. And that takes some steps, and it takes a really well-designed research design before they are going to approve that. So often we do what is called a secondary data analysis. There are some amazing available data sets that already exist, that other people have collected. So often we do theses, and again, you can do original data collection, but often the theses are on those secondary data sets. So your research question is often limited by the data and the measures and variables that are already existing out there. But like I said, there are amazing data sets out there, so you can get lots of questions answered, but you often have to tweak your research questions just a little bit based on what data is available out there. And Carly can kind of touch up on that because, see, initially had a great question, we had to tweak it just a little bit because we couldn't match that exactly on the data set that was the best available fit for that. So during your first semester, the research questions are really important. Finding a data set that matches those research questions, finding the variables from that data set that are going to be able to answer your research questions, doing some data management, writing your introduction, writing your literature review. And then during the second semester, you're going to have to, already basically have your methods written, your results written, and very quickly during that second semester, you will toward maybe like the 3/4 of the way, you will defend your thesis. And it's an oral defense where you will have a PowerPoint presentation that you will do for your committee members. So you will have your dissertation chair and your 2 committee members. And you orally defend your thesis. That is your paper, your thesis paper. And in that oral defense, you will get feedback from your committee. You have gotten a feedback from your thesis chair throughout the whole entire process. And your thesis chair typically will not allow you to go to the defense until she or he feels that you are ready to defend your thesis. And at that defense, you will get feedback from your thesis committee, and then you will still have opportunity to incorporate all the feedback from your committee members to your final thesis paper. And then your thesis chair will still check it one more time for formatting and for those corrections. And then that will go to then it leaves our hands and it goes to the graduate school, and graduate school have their own rules of what do you have to do, and it goes to the binding and publication and so forth. So that's completely separate process, but it's really cool because in the end you will get this, and I usually come here with this long stack of like actually printed and published theses, but again I came late so I didn't have a chance. But you get this beautiful finished product. It's like a published book. And you leave this program feeling very accomplished that you came with this product. And again, not putting out the Capstone project at all, because that's amazing too. And you feel really accomplished because you've done some kind of really tangible project for helping a community partner. So it's both are amazing. It's just what suits your needs. It all depends on what your needs are, what your interests are. Capstone moves quickly, so don't think just because you think that Capstone is going to be easier route. I wouldn't say that it necessarily is. It moves fast. It's very demanding. So it's different. They're both different culminating experiences. So that was my kind of spiel on. Oh, and you need 3.5 GPA to be participating for thesis. And one other thing, how do you, sometimes also the faculty members sort of recruit you. So it's, you can find a faculty member, sometimes faculty member finds you. So I tend to do that a little bit too. I kind of go to the students and kind of say that, hey, have you thought about doing thesis? So that can happen as well. So I will be glad, and then I want Carly to talk about her current experience. So Carly did come to me. Carly came to me because I share expertise in her area of interest. So I'm gonna let Carly talk about her current experience, how she has gone through, and what are some steps, what are maybe some struggles that she have had, what she has gotten out of this experience, and then we're gonna take some questions from you guys.
Yeah, so I am just beginning, well not just beginning, but I have, until May to do this, and I think the biggest thing that I realized, I started originally, I'm doing capstone, I don't want to do a thesis, and then I sat down with Dr. Weir and we talked for maybe 20 minutes, and I was like, okay, what I want to study is so specialized and I want to learn so much about it that this is the right way for me. So basically right now I'm focusing on intergenerational violence, and I'm looking at whether it correlates to future PTSD symptoms of the children who are abused. And right now we're using the Ad Health youth, and we're looking at that study. So that's like what the code books that she was talking about that I have to go through. There's like 4 or 5 different waves, and there's a bunch of different stuff, a bunch of questions, control variables, all that fun stuff that you guys have probably all done in research methods. Which also helped me learn a lot more, because it's very hard when you choose a specific thing. There was not one question where it said, do children who are abused abuse their future children? That's not a question that will ever exist in that. So you have to learn how to go through and kind of create your own research around what you find. So, I mean, like she was talking about, I chose to do a thesis over capstone because I hope in the future to go on to get my PhD and expand where I'm at right now. So I think that's a really good start, because I know at the beginning of your PhD program, it's recommended that because you have to don't you have to write a thesis right when you get into your PhD program?
Yeah. Most programs.
Yeah. So then if you've already written one, or you kind of have a head start there, which was a positive for me. Some tips, some things that I have learned. Like I said, I just started, so I'm not super deep into the process yet. But I've gotten through pretty much my literature review, and one thing I would say is get started right now. If you think about wanting to do your thesis, think about your research question, write out 10, 20 different research questions, whatever you think would be a good thing. Even if you don't think it sounds good, just write it out, get your ideas on paper. What works for me is I create a really detailed outline. So I look at where all my research comes from, where I got it from, and especially naming it a certain way on your computer so that you can go back and say, okay, this is the subject as to why I chose this research. Now I know where I'm at, because when you have like 50 sources like I do, it's very hard to find where you came from. And then staying organized, like I said. But yeah, I mean, I'm very happy that I chose to do the thesis. I think I made the right choice for me. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Guys, what questions do you have? Don't be shy.
Real quick, just to segue back a little bit to Tabby on this, doing the research, the literature review, etc. The textbook gives you a way to do it, etc. Do you have resources for us in terms of using RefWorks better or whatever? Can we just come in and ask you?
Yeah, that's what I'm here for.
Help me organize this from the beginning.
Yeah, I use
amazing.
the online database of the library, and it's just the same way that you've written previous research papers and how you do your studies on there. You can just search the best thing, for me, I would do PTSD / intergenerational violence or certain way, and then you click the certain buttons on the side because you always want it, peer reviewed and all that kind of stuff, and then it will show you the right ones.
I just have a problem organizing myself in a computer because I'm old. And so that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
So,
You
yeah.
can
Any other questions, guys?
I also want to say, if you do the thesis, you get a copy in the library.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you can actually go to the library, type your name in, and find yourself.
And are they all in one shelf up there? Do you, so if you want to see some,
Yeah, and some of them are online only, and then for capstones, I do actually take pictures of posters, so
Aw.
just don't think I'm a dork, but I can take a picture.
You had a question?
Yes, I would like to write a thesis,
Okay.
and I'm looking for someone who could chair. I don't have one right now.
Okay, so all our faculty profiles are online, and it has bios and our CVs, which are academic resumes, so it shows all of our expertise.
You already sold me out.
Oh, I already saw. Okay. All right. So we'll talk later, okay? Yeah.
That being said too, you said that the two members would have to be from the program. Does your chair have to be from the program, or just a faculty member here that is employed fully as a PhD in a different school?
I'll refer that to Dr.
So, the chair of your thesis should come from the School of Public Affairs. Whether it comes from your particular major or not is probably something you'd have to discuss with your director, program director. I could see situations where it could benefit the project to have something different than having somebody from your discipline serve as the chair, as the chair. They definitely need to come from the School of Public Affairs, so you can't pull them in from another college. Now, you may have a committee member from another college, but again, that would be something you would discuss with your chair once your chair is identified, and you'd work that out. I think Dr. Ware pointed this out, but I'd like to reiterate it. The first step in doing the thesis is, once you make sure you have the right GPA and something you want to do, is to contact the faculty member that you want to serve as your chair, and then work through some of those things with them, because they become your liaison and your advocate.
Right.
And so that's what I would do. So to answer that question exactly without details is a tough one, you know?
Yeah. And then, of course, there's horror stories, not from here, but from graduate programs, unnamed graduate programs where students get caught between warring faculty members. That doesn't happen here. I've never heard of that happening at CCS. And it's why it's so important to have the relationship with your chair. You really want the chair to be from your program. Yeah, you know, I don't think there would be any reason not to, or from the School of Public Affairs. I just don't think that's a good plan, because that's the person that's really gonna, other people are gonna take the lead from that person.
Okay, well, the reason I asked the question that way is because you specifically said that the two other members have to be from the program. Now I'm hearing that maybe those could be.
So I think the issue is with the dual students, people that are MCJ, MPA students, and we have a few of those that are coming up and getting to this point now to graduate. The idea is that the committee should have representation from both programs, or if they're getting degrees from both programs. And so
Maybe
that's
I
why the
misworded
hesitancy.
it. I guess I was trying to mostly that they should be tenured or tenure track instead of instructors, because we have senior instructors as well. So they should be tenured or tenure track.
And you're gonna wanna work with your chair on the composition of
Right.
your committee.
That's
Right.
So it's not just something you're kind of doing on your own, but
Right.
you're building it. You're building for the chair, and then from there.
I saw other hands up here.
Is there any other documentation needed to complete the thesis? Like the capstone has the checklist. Do we need documentation to complete the thesis?
So there's a really great website that UCCS Graduate School provides you. So if you go UCCS homepage and you type in, there's a little search bar, type in grad school, it gives you a ton of information on the thesis process. None of those forms will apply to you until you actually are the semester that you're graduating. So you wouldn't have to worry about any of those forms until that second semester. So you would actually have by then talked to the person who is chairing your thesis. That person, again, the chair will walk you through everything. The chair will do so much work on your behalf that it's, again, like we can emphasize enough how important it is that before you start any of this, you're going to find a faculty member who is going to help you through this. So no, there's no forms that you would do until way after you're enrolled into the thesis, and some of those forms will come during the defense, and most of the forms then will be after the defense in the graduate school.
Yeah, and there's not a class that thesis students
Yeah,
take
right.
comparable to
Yeah,
the capstone
right.
class. You do take, you carry credit hours.
Right.
are assigned to your thesis,
Right,
but it's not a
exactly.
class.
It's all between you and the thesis chair. The thesis chair is going to walk you through, give you some guidelines, provide you with resources, come up with a timeline and a plan with you.
Okay, thank you.
And so, just like the capstone, in order to enroll, you have to have a permission code. And so your the faculty member you approach to be your chair for your thesis, again, would advocate for you and get the enrollment code for you so that you can enroll in the class.
Yeah, you don't just sign up for thesis,
Right.
put somebody's name on it.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the faculty member will do it with you.
Okay.
Well, we finished right about on time with our program. Thank you so much, and I'm glad you didn't leave them behind at the doctor's office.
They're hanging in the hallway.
Or they can come in. You know, those sandwiches are really pretty good. So be sure you eat some sandwiches, and any other questions, I'm gonna hang around here until you're done with me.
Do you need one of these?
I'm good. Yeah. Other questions?
Is there a deadline to register for the capstone one? Obviously, there's
Well-
only a certain amount of seats, but is there like a?
We're gonna have a seat for you.
Okay.
That's not the problem. I gave that deadline of, I think, the beginning of December, just so that, people would engage right now.
Okay.
But we're not gonna run out of space in the capstone class, between the online and the in-class, we'll be able to accommodate everybody.
And Krista
I don't
had-
think I'm going out on a limb there, am I?
Krista had mentioned previously that obviously we have to get all of our core courses done ahead of time, which is done, but if we had one more class that we had to take for the credit
Yeah.
requirement, that we could take some sort of elective.
Mm-hmm.
Do we need to run that by our advisors
Yes.
first?
Yes.
Okay,
That's an academic advising
okay,
matter, yeah.
okay. But typically that's okay if the advisor says, yes, this elective is fine, that you're doing an elective and your capstone at the same time.
Yeah, so, and
Okay.
we have that happen on occasion. I mean, we would hate to postpone somebody's graduation by a semester over one class, right? Because then you're part-time for both semesters and it creates some financial aid issues and all kinds of things like that. What we discourage, though, is people taking number one, core classes with capstone, because the idea is your core class should contribute to your capstone.
Yeah.
And second of all, taking more than one elective. And I think,
That's kind of pushing it.
well, so the capstone is a beast.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a beast. And Jay, this may be the time to kick in and talk. But it's, just like the thesis has a deadline. When do you have to defend by typically in
So-
mid-April for a thesis for the May graduation?
Spring, early April, I think April 11th is the deadline. And
You're not running off on me, are you?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm just celebrating because you need
Yeah.
to. So
Okay.
For fall graduation, early November.
So you have that early deadline too, but with the thesis you have 2 semesters, right?
Yeah.
And so when I say the capstone's a beast, it's more than it's a lot of work, and it ebbs and flows. And so some semesters or some weeks, this week, some of our folks, everybody's supposed to turn in their final capstone report to the readers tonight by midnight. So I checked my email a while ago, and I've got a long list of emails of, hey, I'm submitting this, things like that. So for the next couple of days, students in the capstone are going to be, man, this is the best class I've ever taken. There's nothing to do this week, right? But they busted their rear ends the past 2 weeks, and so it ebbs and flows. And so to think that you're going to have a regular class as a capstone is a misnomer. It's a lot of work, and you need to focus your attention and think about things. And tell me if I'm wrong, but the longer you think about these things, the clearer it becomes.
That's for sure.
Okay, and so
That is for sure.
so do you want to talk a little bit about your experience thus far?
Yeah, I do. So my name again is J. Michael Jaramillo. I'm doing my capstone with Dr. Cottle this semester, and I'm doing mine on mitigating graffiti through commissioning murals. I'm a muralist myself for 15 years, and I've painted dozens of murals in the Denver metro area, but I want to become a director of arts and culture and public art, so I want to apply that knowledge there. So that's my background. But as you're talking about, the assignments that they have you do, they prepare it to be a culmination altogether for your capstone. So it's going to prepare you each step. It's going to make sure you covered all your bases. I had to start over again, as you mentioned. Like I had one of my supervisors for my job. I work for City of Thornton. She no longer works there in her position as director. So she was my third reader, but now she works for Broomfield, and it's not quite working out. So I had to start with another organization. Thankfully, I'm on the North Bend Arts Humanities Foundation board, so I also share a common ground and passion for their mission. So I just encourage you to align with an organization that you are already aligned with, or you have a interest working with, and you can see yourself working with that person from, you know, the next 3 months or so.
Yeah.
You know? So I recommend that, and also just gotta prepare quantitative research. You gotta, you know, acquire all of it ahead of time. Make sure you have access to it. I had to, like I said, start over, so I had to, you know, I had to do all this stuff like in the middle of September. I was rushing around and figuring out, you know.
Yeah, your data sources, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So you got to make sure you have that stuff ahead of time, and also numerous scholarly resources. You're gonna, as you know, you can say you have like 25 pages, and so not quite as much in Capstone since it's only 20 to 25 pages, but you want to be able to put that scholarly research in each component of your Capstone project. And let's see, I was making notes while you guys were talking, so
good job.
go up here. So also, just if you guys are in class here on campus, you know, maximize your you know, your interaction with doctors, professors, your peers. You know, like seriously, because I've been doing mine online for majority of my MPA program. So I highly recommend that, because we've been in communication, but it's been on the phone, it's been, you know, through email, and it can be difficult. So utilize those connections, and also CC all of your readers all together when you do your emails, so everybody's on the same page. So when you turn something in, you know, make sure, like, that's helped out a lot too. And let's see, yeah, I mean, this is, as you said earlier, it's a culmination of your entire programs as a MPA, CJ programs. And if you're doing it, you know, departmental or disciplinarial, yeah. So if you're doing that, like, just apply it together. Because even just now, I just realized too that we're talking about, for my program, there was more graffiti in the summer, and I was talking to one of my friends who's in CJ, and they were talking about how there's more crime in the summertime, winter times. And now I know it's called seasonality of crime, so I'm gonna talk to Dr. Cottle about it. So there you go. So I'm doing MPA, but now I'm realizing, okay, wow, you know. So that's my experience, and wish you guys the best.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jay. Jay just came in and agreed to do this, so thanks.
So are spouse students prepared to stand up and do what it takes? Yeah, I would say so. I would say so. Great. Other questions? Anybody want a sandwich? Great. Well, again, thanks so much for coming, and don't hesitate to get in touch with any of us.